They say your whole life can change in a second. I never really believed that until my phone rang on a gray Thursday afternoon. It was the school nurse. Her voice was shaking. Liam collapsed during gym. We've called 911. He's on the way to Mercy General. My knees buckled. I didn't even hang up. I dropped everything at work, laptop open, coffee half sipped, papers scattered, and ran. Not walked, ran. I barely remember the drive. My vision blurred with tears. I was speeding through red lights like some manic criminal, praying I wouldn't crash before I reached my baby. My 8-year-old boy, my sunshine, my reason. When I finally burst through the ER doors, the sterile smell hit me like a punch. Cold, harsh lights, nurses moving too fast, a baby crying somewhere down the hall. A doctor approached me with a clipboard and asked my name. I must have looked wild, hair a mess, breath ragged, eyes wide with panic. They led me to a small room, and there he was, my Liam, hooked up to wires, monitors beeping steadily, lips pale. A song. Eyes half-lidded. I broke. I don't know how long I sat there, holding his tiny hand, whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep. You're okay, baby. Mommy's here. Mommy's not going anywhere. Then I remembered. I had to let someone know. My parents, my sister. We may not be the closest family, but still. They say they love Liam. So I texted our group chat. Liam collapsed at school. He's in the ER. We don't know what's happening yet. I stared at the phone, waiting for a reply. 10 minutes passed, 15, then finally, ding. It was my mom. We're busy with Margaret today. Hope he feels better soon. That was it. No call, no we're coming. No, is he breathing? Just, Margaret needs us today. I stared at her text, rereading it, trying to make it make sense. Margaret, my older sister, 35 years old, single, works part-time at a boutique, lives 5 minutes from our parents. What exactly could she be going through that was more important than a child in the emergency room? I didn't respond. What could I say that wasn't screaming? Liam stirred beside me. I wiped my tears before he saw. He was so small in that bed, so fragile. My heart ached watching the rise and fall of his chest. The nurses said it might have been a seizure, might have been. They didn't know yet. An hour later, another message came in, from my mom again. I held my breath, hoping they'd had a change of heart, that they were on their way, that they were sorry. Nope. Look at how we arranged Margaret's new living room. Doesn't it look great? Attached, a photo of a new couch and some throw pillows. I showed it to my husband in silence. He blinked twice, then clenched his jaw. Even he, the one always telling me to give people grace, looked like he was ready to explode. We didn't respond. I sat back down, kissed Liam's forehead, and realized something I never thought I would. My family, the one I was born into, wasn't my safe place anymore. And maybe they never had been. By morning, Liam's condition had stabilized, at least physically. The doctors still had no answers, only long medical terms and cautious tones. EEGs, MRIs, blood panels. I barely slept in that rigid hospital recliner, but I didn't care. I just kept watching him breathe. Around 7 a.m., I stepped outside his room to take a call. It was the pediatric neurologist. He wanted to do further tests to rule out epilepsy, a brain infection, or possibly a tumor. My legs felt numb. I thanked him politely, even though all I wanted to do was scream. I needed comfort. just a shred of human decency. I didn't expect miracles from my family, but I expected something. So against my better judgment, I called my mom. She answered on the third ring, chirpy as ever. "Hey, sweetie, how's Liam? Did he wake up dramatic like usual?" I froze. That tone, like we were chatting about the weather, like nothing had happened. "No, Mom, he's not okay. The doctors think it might be neurological. They're running MRIs and blood tests." There was a pause on the line, and I thought, finally, maybe now she gets it. But then she chuckled. "Well, kids are resilient. Maybe he's just faking it. You know how dramatic he can be. I used to pretend to faint to get out of school, too." I swear I stopped breathing. That was her reaction? To laugh? To compare my 8-year-old's terrifying seizure to skipping school? I ended the call without a word. When I got back to the hospital room, I was shaking so hard I could barely hold my coffee. My husband looked up and asked, "What did she say?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just handed him the phone and let him read the text from the day before and relive that absurd phone call through my trembling voice. His jaw locked again. "That's it," he muttered. We didn't say much the rest of the morning. Instead, we sat beside Liam, holding his hand, brushing his hair back, taking turns reading to him when he opened his eyes for a few seconds at a time. But in my head, a storm had started. And here's the part no one outside our family knew. For years, I had been covering everything for my parents. My husband and I, mortgage, utilities, car payments. They weren't broke, they were just irresponsible. When my dad's business folded, they didn't cut expenses. They just leaned harder on us. We never said no. We paid thousands each month to keep them afloat while raising a family of our own. Every time I asked for a bit of time or support, I was met with excuses. "We're helping Margaret. We're tired. It's just a phase." And I swallowed it. But this, mocking my child during a health crisis? That night, when we finally got home to shower and change clothes, I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. Every bill, every auto pay, every single account that had my name attached to it, I canceled it. Mortgage? Removed. Car loan? Gone. Credit card support? Done. No explanations, no guilt trip, just freedom. It was almost 2 a.m. Balsam. When I crawled into bed next to the love of my life, knowing we had made the right decision. And for the first time in days, I slept. The next few days were a blur of hospital corridors, soft whispers with nurses, and the low hum of medical machines. Liam was stable, but far from okay. The MRI scans were inconclusive, and the neurologist wanted to do a spinal tap. My heart clenched every time I saw a needle, every time Liam flinched. He was only 8. At home, everything felt hollow. The silence was too loud. The toys in the living room, untouched. The cereal box he opened that morning before school still sat half-closed on the counter like a ghost of our former routine. And from my parents, nothing. No call, no visit, no flowers, no message asking for updates. Only a vacuum of absence. Until the third day, I was folding Liam's little pajamas, getting ready to bring them to the hospital, when my phone buzzed. It was Mom, not a call, a text. Tried to use my credit card, and it was declined. Got a notice about a missed mortgage payment, too. What's going on? There was no "How's Liam?" No "We're worried." No "We're sorry." Just panic. But not for her grandson, for her conveniences. I stared at the message, heart pounding. not with fear, but with something I had buried for years. Anger, raw, righteous anger. I waited an hour before responding. I wanted to be calm. I wanted to be exact. You made your priorities clear. You chose curtains and throw pillows over your grandson's seizure. You laughed at him. You ghosted us when we needed you. I'm done supporting people who show no compassion for my child. It was the kind of message that had years behind it. Years of being the strong one. The one who didn't ask for help. The one who paid the bills while my sister Margaret cried over scratched furniture or slow boutique sales. Seconds after I hit send, she called. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail, voice trembling, caught between fury and desperation. This is cruel. You know your father and I need that help. Margaret's been going through so much, and now you're punishing us over one little misunderstanding. You're blowing this out of proportion. Liam's fine now, right? We didn't think it was serious. We thought you had it under control. That was the line that did it. We didn't think it was serious. A child has a seizure and they think it's not serious? Or worse, they didn't want to be inconvenienced by someone else's crisis. My fingers shook as I deleted the message. That night, I sat down with my husband over a quiet dinner, just the two of us finally, and I told him everything. Not just about the money, about the years I'd spent convincing myself that emotional neglect was normal, that being ignored was somehow my fault. He listened, and then he said something that made me cry. You're not wrong to choose peace. You're not wrong to protect our son. I slept better that night, not because the storm had passed. No, the storm was still very much alive, but because for once, I wasn't pretending that the thunder wasn't real. The silence from my parents lasted a week. No voicemails, no texts, no awkward apologies, just stillness. At first, it felt like relief. A pressure lifted, but as the days passed, the silence turned from peaceful to eerie, like standing in the eye of a hurricane, knowing something else was coming. Liam was still going through tests. Some days he was chipper, asking for popsicles and Mario Kart. Other days, he was listless and tired, his little fingers twitching involuntarily. We smiled through it, joked with the nurses, and read to him before bed. But under it all, I carried a constant, suffocating fear that my son's body was keeping a secret we hadn't discovered yet. Then, out of nowhere, my missile. My cousin Jenna called. I almost let it go to voicemail. I was drained. Physically, emotionally, spiritually. But something told me to answer. Her voice was tight, uncertain, like someone walking barefoot over broken glass. Hey, I heard what happened with your parents. And Margaret, can I tell you something? I sat down slowly, bracing for impact. What Jenna told me made my skin go cold. Margaret, dear, overwhelmed Margaret, had taken out a massive loan in my father's name. Not last week, not last month, months ago. Apparently, she wanted to expand her boutique, open a second location in a high-rent neighborhood. She had gone to our parents, begged for help, played the "I'll never be successful if you don't believe in me" card. And they caved. They co-signed everything. Thousands and thousands of dollars. While my husband and I had been quietly paying their mortgage, their car loan, their utilities, they had been funneling what little credit they had into Margaret's fantasy business venture. And the kicker? She wasn't even hiding it. According to Jenna, Margaret had been spinning a tale to the extended family. that Liam never had a seizure, that he fainted and I was being dramatic as usual, that I was using my son's little episode to throw a tantrum and punish our parents, that I was jealous of Margaret's success. I laughed, not out of humor, but that bitter, disbelieving laugh that feels like poison in your throat. I had sacrificed for these people, not just money, but energy, time, dignity. I'd smiled through Thanksgiving dinners where Margaret dominated every conversation. I'd sat through phone calls where my mother gushed about her brave, hard-working daughter, and then turned around and criticized me for being too intense. And now, that daughter, their golden child, was the reason they couldn't support us in a real emergency. And worse, they were defending her while she rewrote the truth. Later that night, I shared everything with my husband. He didn't speak for a long time, just stared at the wall, his jaw clenched so tight, I thought he might crack a tooth. Finally, he said, "I don't want them near Liam. I don't trust them. They chose her lies over our truth." And for once, I didn't try to be the bridge, the buffer, the peacekeeper. For once, I agreed. The next few days passed quietly. I took Liam to appointments. We played board games when he had energy. I stopped waiting for calls that would never come. But just when I thought the worst had passed, when I thought maybe the damage had settled into silence, my dad showed up at our front door. No text? Just there. It was a Tuesday evening. Rain tapped gently against the windows, and Liam was finally asleep after a long day of tests and doctor visits. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet you hold sacred when your child has been through hell. Then came the knock, firm, measured, not urgent, but not casual either. My husband and I looked at each other. He stood first, peeking through the curtain. "It's your dad." I froze. A part of me, maybe the old part that still wanted to believe in unconditional love, hoped he was here to apologize, to say everything we needed to hear. But the woman I had become, the one who had bled silently for this family, knew better. My husband opened the door just wide enough to speak. "Can I help you?" My father looked older, not just tired, weary. His shoulders were slumped, assommé, his eyes red. For a split second, I saw the man who used to carry me on his shoulders at the park. But the weight of what he had allowed, what he had enabled, sat heavy between us. "I just want to talk," he said. "Please." I stepped into view. "Come in," I said curtly. He entered cautiously, like a stranger in a place he no longer belonged. I didn't offer him a seat. He looked around, eyes landing briefly on Liam's drawings taped to the wall. "I miss him," he murmured. My throat tightened. I wanted to scream. "You missed your chance to show that when it mattered." But I stayed silent. He went on. "We didn't handle things right. Your mom and I, we thought you had it under control. We didn't want to get in the way. And Margaret, well, she gets overwhelmed easily. She needed support that day, too." There it was. The excuse. Margaret's emotional fragility. The golden shield they always held up when she failed, when she manipulated, when she avoided responsibility. And now, when she rewrote my son's trauma into a petty sibling rivalry, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I simply said, "You thought helping her rearrange a living room was more important than showing up for your grandson in the ER." He looked down at his hands, ashamed. We thought you didn't need us." I stepped forward, voice calm but sharp. "That's the problem. You only show up when someone's falling apart. I was holding things together so tightly I couldn't breathe, and you saw that as strength. You took it as permission to ignore me, to ignore him. He swallowed hard. Are you really going to keep him from us? I didn't flinch. I'm not keeping him from anyone. You made yourselves absent. You prioritized Margaret's boutique and her meltdown over his health, over our pain. And when I stopped paying your bills, that's when you remembered you had a grandson. The silence that followed was heavy, trembling. He nodded slowly, the weight of it finally pressing into his bones. I'm sorry, he said quietly, more than you know. I believed him, but that didn't mean I could forget. Sorry doesn't erase the choices, and it doesn't rebuild trust. That's earned, over time. Maybe. He stood at the door, hesitating. If Margaret had a seizure, I said softly, I would have dropped everything. I would have been there, no matter what. That's the difference between me and her. He didn't argue. He just looked at me with a sadness I'd never seen before. Take care of Liam, he said finally. We are, I replied. And then he left. He didn't slam the door. He didn't look back. He walked down the path like a man who knew he had just lost something that might never return. And I, finally, felt the weight shift. Not disappear, but shift. 2 weeks passed. Liam was home again, but we lived in a new kind of normal now. One shaped by neurology appointments, daily logs of symptoms, and the silent dread that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a one-time episode. Every twitch, every moment of dizziness sent a wave of fear through my chest. Still, we smiled for him. We made pancakes in silly shapes. We bought him a journal so he could be the boss of his brain, as the doctor encouraged. He didn't know the full story. He didn't need to, not yet. What he needed was love, and he had it, every drop we had. Meanwhile, from my parents, silence, until a birthday card for Liam arrived. Late. Inside was a generic greeting and a $25 gift card to a toy store that had shut down 3 months ago. I stared at it, almost laughing. Not because it was funny, but because it was such a perfect metaphor for them now. Outdated, disconnected, irrelevant. A hollow gesture mailed too late from people who had stopped showing up when it mattered most. And Margaret? Well, Margaret's expansion lasted exactly 3 weeks. Jenna, ever the reluctant informant, texted me with the update. Margaret had failed to pay rent on time. She couldn't manage her employees. Customers complained about her lack of professionalism. The grand opening she spent months hyping fizzled into a quiet, unnoticed closure. She blamed the landlord, the staff, the weather, everyone but herself. She still hadn't reached out to me. Not to apologize, not to explain, nothing. And honestly, that silence was a gift. Sometimes closure isn't a dramatic apology. Sometimes it's just the absence of more lies. One evening, after Liam had fallen asleep with his stuffed tiger under one arm and a new EEG monitor strapped to his wrist, my husband and I sat together on the back porch. We didn't talk for a while, just listened to the crickets. Let the night hold us in its quiet. Then he said softly, I think we should move, not far, just away from them. I nodded, not to escape, but to protect. To build a home where our child could grow up surrounded by people who chose love. Not obligation, not guilt, just love. So we started looking. Not for a bigger house, not a fancier zip code, just a place with more sunlight, fewer shadows. We talked about boundaries, how even family, if they hurt more than they heal, didn't earn a seat at our table. And I thought of my mother, her laughter when I said neurology, her text about throw pillows, her voice on that voicemail, begging for bills to be paid, not a grandson to be held. I felt something close inside me, not anger, not grief, just clarity. I didn't need their money, their approval, or their half-hearted attempts at mending what they'd willfully torn apart. What I needed was here, in my arms, in my home, in the tiny hand that clutched mine when Liam said, "Mommy, I'm okay. You can sleep now." That night, I kissed my son's forehead, turned off the light, and whispered, "You are worth everything, and you will never have to earn the love you deserve." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. Being family doesn't give someone the right to hurt you repeatedly and still expect your loyalty. Just because someone is related to you by blood doesn't mean they get unlimited access to your life, energy, or forgiveness. Love must be mutual. Respect must be earned. Toxic patterns don't get a free pass just because they come from family.